Thanks a lot, Sasha, and thank you very much for inviting me, and particularly Sasha, thank you for the close working relationship that we've had with you, and you picked up on some of the things that I will touch on in my remarks as well. So good afternoon, everyone. It's really exciting to be part of this webinar, across not just across the world. It's it's lovely to be sitting in a bedroom in Hackney in London and talking to the Philippines, and it's brilliant. So I'm really delighted to join you today. Like, I've just been hearing, and like the world and all the cities in the world, London's been really hard hit by the pandemic. Only 2 weeks ago, Mayor Khan declared a major incident in our capital as the virus has spread out of control, establishing an enhanced and coordinated response from citywide partners, building on the response that was already there. But even through, and I do want to highlight this, even through the hardship, we have seen some of the best of our communities, with Londoners' willingness to look after each other, including delivering emergency food to those in urgent need and securing accommodation for the homeless and for domestic abuse survivors, and demonstrating the enduring strength and spirit of our city. And I'm sure that you've all found the same in your cities as well. And the internet has provided a place where communities can continue to meet and grow. We've clapped for our carers, we've organised local mutual aid networks, and worshippers have been able to be supported to congregate online. So I just want to be really clear that the online space can have great positives, and there can be great advantages to it. But we all know that it's not without its dangers, and we know that COVID-19 is not the only virus that has spread during this time. Because as people stay at home and spend more time online, often in isolation, extremists have used this opportunity to promote their hate and conspiracy theories across the internet. And although online hate and intolerance transcends municipal and even national boundaries, it is in our cities where the effects of polarisation and radicalisation are often most keenly felt. And as we've seen sadly too often in London, and which the world saw dramatically in Washington just this month. Cities therefore need to be on the front line of efforts to counter this, and are best placed to contest the real world effects of online hate taking seed and growing. In London, we've seen the sowing of discontent through conspiracy theories and through hate towards minority ethnic and religious communities by falsely blaming them for COVID-19 infections. We even saw calls for infected individuals to visit places of worship to spread the virus to religious minorities. But perhaps most worryingly, we've seen those who are potentially vulnerable to radicalisation being drawn further away from important support networks. They're isolated from friends, from teachers, and from colleagues, the people who in normal times can lend support or raise concerns where they see them. These are the obvious challenges we have faced already, and I'm sorry to be a little bit pessimistic, but I think we'll all agree there are really tough times ahead. Like many cities, we're facing really difficult economic challenges. And whilst I have every confidence that London and Londoners will overcome these, history's taught us that periods of uncertainty and economic hardship can create fertile breeding grounds for hatred and division. That's why, as part of our recovery from the pandemic, we want to take every opportunity to root out the inequality and poverty, which all too often lie at the heart of disenchantment and resentment, feelings which extremists readily seek to exploit. But I have got cause to be optimistic, because London is a resilient city and one that is familiar with challenges of this nature. In 2017, we suffered an unprecedented spate of perpetrated and foiled terrorist attacks. And in response, the Mayor created London's first ever Countering Violent Extremism programme to identify opportunities for new, improved and renewed work to counter extremism in the city. The programme delivered the most comprehensive citywide review and engagement exercise in this policy area ever, both nationally and I believe internationally. It was made clear that civil society groups at the heart of our communities are often best placed to stand up to hate, intolerance and extremism. And while they're willing to do so, it also became clear that they required more support in order to do this effectively. Those key findings led the Mayor to invest more than any other mayor before him in a new London Countering Violent Extremism programme with 4 key objectives: to help strengthen our communities against extremism, to encourage Londoners to stand up to hate and intolerance, to safeguard vulnerable Londoners from radicalisation, and to stop the spread of extremist ideologies. I say this to highlight that before the pandemic hit, we were already in a strong position, and as a city, we were being proactive about the support we could offer to our citizens to tackle these issues. At the heart of this new programme is a fund which Sasha referred to provide support to those groups who are best placed within our city to counter hate and intolerance. In January of this 2020, in January of last year, we partnered with Google.org to launch the Shared Endeavour Fund, an £800,000 investment which is supporting over 30 grassroots projects across London to tackle racism, hate, intolerance and radicalisation. These are projects which are being delivered in schools, community centres, sports clubs and theatres across London. And I'm really pleased that our projects have shown great resilience and ingenuity to ensure that their vital work continues to be delivered during the pandemic, with many converting to virtual delivery. It was so important that just as the extremism continued to sow their hate and division, we did not stop our work to challenge them at every opportunity. We've also managed to continue with the other important work in this area, despite the restrictions caused by the pandemic. Last year, we continued to see the targeting of religious minorities, including the spreading of baseless rumours blaming Muslims and Jews for spreading COVID-19 whilst flouting distancing rules. In London, we were already partnering with security and faith organisations to promote safety and security best practice to places of worship and the religious leaders. And we've been able to continue and even expand this work throughout the pandemic. So I believe London was in a strong position from the work we already had planned and underway to tackle hate, intolerance and extremism. And although the last year has proved incredibly challenging, doing nothing and conceding ground to the extremists was simply not an option. But we don't rest on our laurels as the challenge is a considerable one. We also need national governments to work at pace to implement sensible and workable regulations in order to protect citizens from online harms, to stem the tide of hate and misinformation, which is driving a wedge in our societies. We also stand ready to continue to collaborate with our friends and colleagues in cities around the world. We know that an effective response to any major issue must be one built around partnerships. We have lots of experience we'd like to share, but equally we have lots we can learn from others. And that's why events like this are so important and why I really thank you for bringing us together. I'm really delighted that London has been asked to contribute.